Welcome to Save Our Sleep. Tizzie and the Save Our Sleep team believe it's every child's right to receive comfort, a parent's right to demonstrate love, and everyone's right to a full night of sleep. This podcast is not a medical or scientific volume, but a collection of tried and tested solutions and tips based on my many years of experience with babies and young children. Its main purpose is to help parents understand and avoid sleep problems in young babies and toddlers.
We'd like to recognise the Wadawurrung people who are the traditional owners of this region, which Tizzie and myself live and are recording today's podcast on. We acknowledge and respect that they have taken care of this land and water and raised children in this nation for over an extraordinary 70,000 years. The Save Our Sleep podcast is dedicated to helping you prevent and solve sleep problems while having some fun along the way. We endeavour to discuss all things family related, starting from pre-conception all the way through to an adult child leaving home and beyond. Some topics may be triggering. If you find this is the case, please reach out to your or your child's health nurse or general practitioner. And welcome back to the Save Our Sleep podcast, here with Tizzie Hall and myself, Zoe, episode 11.
Zoe Star.
Hi, Tizzie, what's the crack?
Oh,
Yay,
the crack
I'm
is-
Irishing.
Well, look, I've got some very good crack.
Oh, really?
So, a lady called, I think it said Tan Marie,
Okay.
on Facebook invited me to her baby's birth.
Oh, stop. Really?
Yeah, so I might actually, for the first time in my life, be at an actual baby's birth. I don't know. It depends if everything lines up.
etc. Oh, my goodness.
Well, I think
that's
she's
amazing.
in
Warrnambool?
No, the other one, Wollongong.
Okay.
Is that or
Yeah.
Canberra? Or I remember
Oh.
thinking it's maybe an 8 or 9 hour
Oh,
drive.
okay.
So, and it's not her first baby, so who
Yes.
knows? I might not be able to get there in time. It might not happen. But
Oh,
imagine
that's
if
so
it did.
beautiful. That's really, really nice.
So thank you very, very much
On
for
your
that.
Tan
Yes.
Marie. Awesome.
Yes.
Fantastic. And how's your week been? Got any news for us?
It's just a week as a mum and school, and where do the weeks go?
Yeah.
I'm at the every day goes so quickly, and you're at every day goes so slowly because you're waiting for your baby to arrive.
Well, yes, that's very true. What is it? The days are short, but the years are long, or is it the other way around?
Yeah, but it's like because you're pregnant, like now.
I know.
These
it's
last
like,
3-4 weeks.
Yep.
What are you now? 36 weeks?
Yeah.
So these last 4 weeks will go so slow.
I know, because we're in anticipation.
And then when the baby arrives,
It'll
we'll
be-
be like the baby's 8 weeks old. But where
I
did
know.
that go?
I know.
Where did
Yeah,
that go?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just normal mum things really
Yeah,
for me.
okay.
Nothing's really changed. It's just normal day-to-day
Same
stuff. What was I
old.
going to say? I know what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So how many toys do my children have? So can I just say, before I had children, I had children stay with me. I had children in my care, and I always had a house full of children, and I had a sleep clinic, and we always had children in our lives. We had a house full of toys before we had children. Then we had children, and I've got 3 boys, and we always have parties, and then they just get given so much stuff.
Yes.
I'm so over all the stuff they get given. And half of it they don't use. Half of the birthday presents just get put in a pile and don't get touched.
Yes.
We have so much stuff. But
Yes.
anyway, so how many toys would my children have? Too many?
Yes.
But they're not my children's
toy
toys.
store.
Sorry. How many toys
a
would be in my
collection.
household?
Yeah.
Too many?
You've got a lot of toys.
So guess what
Yeah.
happened yesterday? Zoe
I know
Star
what happened
put
yesterday.
am I allowed to say?
Yeah, of course.
Obviously decided to empty her house.
Yes.
And I get this random message from my lovely husband Nathan going, "You need to give Zoe X amount of money." I go, "What for?" He goes, "Oh, because Kira bought a toy off her Facebook feed." And I'm like, "What? We don't need any more toys. It's his birthday next week." No.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, okay, do you know what? Zoe can give him that for his birthday because
Yeah.
he doesn't need to buy toys.
No way.
And I'd much rather you
I would
give...
never accept money off your family,
Okay,
by the
I
way.
don't care. I
But
know...
do you want the item in your house?
Yeah, but I don't... But give it to him as a birthday
Yeah,
present and
sure.
don't buy him a birthday
Yeah,
present. Not
yeah.
that you were probably going to buy him
Yeah,
a birthday present
sure.
anyhow.
Yes.
But I'll give it to him as a birthday present.
Yes.
Like, it's his birthday in, 2-3 weeks? Actually, when this podcast goes live, it was probably his birthday last week.
Yes. Yeah.
And
He doesn't need a toy 2 weeks before his birthday. You know what? I was selling it on Marketplace, and I buy everything for the boys from Marketplace. And here's a hot tip. It's not only saving you dollars, it's not only saving landfill. You not only get to on-sell it when you finish with it for the same price. It's usually
built.
I
knew you were going to say that.
This is the best bit, especially about this ridiculously large, am I allowed to say the brand?
No.
Warm, hot car.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Hot Wheels.
Big
we don't want any more plastic. I don't want any more plastic.
Yeah.
My favourite toy.
I'm proud that Nathan was looking at it as a second-hand item, though. You know,
he was
so
looking
much
at it
for the
because
environment.
he'd come to me and asked if Kieran. Okay, so Kieran went to the eye doctor. He had to go and have his head checked in the Royal Children's. He had to make sure everything was good. He always gets a gift from the gift store. They now must have a toy store at the Royal Children's, and he was looking at the same track, and it was $300.
Yes.
So you should be selling it for $400 because you built it. And then Nathan saw, I don't know, but Nathan buys ridiculous stuff, but I have no luck. I see stuff on Marketplace and I try to buy it. I get really upset because officially on Marketplace, if somebody puts something up there and you say yes please or first or whatever, and you look at the rules and you say, and then they say, oh, we already sold it by private message. I don't think that's allowed, and I get really upset. So, and I have no luck buying anything on Marketplace.
Not meant to be.
So that is a bit annoying.
Yeah, that's so funny.
So hair tourniquet.
Yes. What are you on about?
So even though this is our little bit of chat at the beginning, it's a topic. It came up in the last episode. We were talking about sleeping bags, and we were talking about the inside of the sleeping bags and how the inside of my sleeping bags are all the same. So they all feel the same because children with sensory issues, and not even sensory issues, like kids just might use the inside of the sleeping bag to fall asleep, and they like to they might rub their toes on the inside of the sleeping bag. And I was saying that if the inside of the sleeping bag feels different, they might not settle as easily to sleep. And different sleeping bag companies have different feels to the inside of their sleeping bags. My sleeping bags, making a sleeping bag is a science. It's an absolute science. It has to do with how fast the fabric burns. It has to do with what fill you put in. We're not going to go into all of that now, but it's an absolute science. And one of the things is to get the inside of the sleeping bag feeling exactly the same for your little children. But then the question comes, should you put your baby in the sleeping bag in socks or no socks? So you can put your baby in a baby grow, which is, what is the difference between a baby grow with feet attached, so a baby grow that's enclosed, an all-in-one, a onesie that's enclosed, and a onesie that's footless? Well, the difference is one's footless and one's enclosed. But then why would you not put your baby into a sleeping bag with an all-in-one with socks on versus a baby grow with feet? Can you repeat my question? Is that making sense? So what's the difference between buying a baby grow with enclosed feet and buying a footless baby grow and adding socks? That's my question. Do you know the difference?
Well, no, I suppose not.
No. So there is a difference.
Yeah.
So I would put children to bed in a bundler, which is like a big long nighty dress, which we're bringing out our own one soon.
Can't wait.
And
just in time for my baby, please.
Footless baby grow or an enclosed baby grow. I would never put socks on. You think, what's the difference? Well, the difference is socks can be tighter, which can affect their feet, affect their toes.
Yes.
Also, for some reason, socks like to get hair in them in the washing machine. So this is hair tourniquet. So in the washing machine, is it hair tourniquet?
It must be tourniquet.
Sorry,
because I didn't know what you were talking about last week, but now I know.
I like to make up my own words.
Do
you think it's because I've got dyslexia?
It's endearing,
I just
really.
like to make up my own words.
Well, let's just go with it.
So,
tourniquet, which means something
tourniquet,
tied.
right? So, and I call it fornicate for some reason. So Google Tizzie Hall hair tourniquet.
Okay.
It's really, really common, right?
Yes.
So the sock goes in the washing machine and maybe it gets inside out, I don't know, but for some reason the sock gets hair in it. Then the hair goes onto the baby's toe or penis.
Yep.
It can happen to their penises.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know,
Fingers.
is that to do with cloth nappies? I don't know how it gets. Maybe Google how that happens. I don't know. But it gets on their toes from their socks, right? I found out, I knew about this, but it happened to me. So here's a story that happened to me. So one day, Kieran was screaming. He was a baby on a routine and he was screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. I couldn't work out why. I tried everything. I couldn't stop him screaming. In the end, I thought, I'm going to strip him because there's something wrong with this child. I took all his clothes off and could not work out what was wrong with him. He was screaming. I had everything off. Then I looked at his toes. So I took all his clothes off. So if your baby is on a routine, so they're happy and contented, this is where I find it difficult when babies aren't on routines, because how do you know if there's something wrong with your baby if your baby always cries?
Yeah.
Okay. So a baby on a routine, it sounds like I'm jumping subjects, I'm not. We had a beautiful gathering of Irish families at my house last weekend, and there was a 5-month-old baby there on a routine. She was on my routines. Her mother, Noreen, is fantastic. She follows the routines perfectly. Her face when I offered to do a house tour at exactly 3:00, would you like to look around the house? And she's like going, I need to breastfeed, it's 3:00.
Ah, yes.
And her face, and it was like people say the only time they get out of routine is when they're with Tizzie Hall. And her little girl is so happy. She is the happiest baby because she's on a routine. Now, routine babies do not cry. So if her baby started screaming, or let's go back to my baby screaming baby, why? If you have a routine baby who seldom cries unless they're doing the settling cry, which they don't do very often when they are in a routine, you strip them. This is if they're screaming for a long time and you really know there's something wrong and they look like they've got tears and they're really upset. Yeah. You strip them and you start at the top and you check every part of their body. You look for bee stings, you look for bites, you look for hair tourniquets. Okay, so I'm checking Kieran and I finally get to his feet. And one of his little toes is so swollen and it looks like it's about to fall off. And it's really bad.
Yeah.
Where we were living above the warehouse, we could see the ambulance depot. And it must have been around the time where I knew that they changed shifts. And I saw my friend's car was there. So I phoned her up and I said, hey, such and such, any chance you can pop up to the warehouse after your shift, or any chance, or I can dial, I don't really want to dial 000, but any chance you can come up to the warehouse? And she said, yeah, I'm finishing work in 10 minutes. I'll come up when I finish. And I'm like, okay, because I knew they were doing handover. Yes. Well, I kind of knew that they would have just done handover and they'd be having like their cup of tea or their whatever they have with the new crew. Yeah. Because I watch people. I'm a people watcher. Yeah. Okay. So, and I do not take the mickey. I dial 000 if I need to. But this, to me, this didn't feel like a 000 phone call. It felt like a, just call your mate. Okay. Which I don't often do. So she's in my mum's group. Mum's groups are great. So she comes up and she's like, oh yeah, I'll just snip it off. Oh, she tried. Couldn't. She must have tried for 20 minutes. She couldn't get this hair tourniquet off his toe. Yeah. So then she's like, oh, do you know what? I'm going to call such and such. So he's fantastic, So she phoned down to the depot and it was someone in the next shift. And she said, any chance you can pop up to Tizzie's warehouse? Which is literally like, they would be, it's like the same building basically. Wow. They would be able to like jump in their ambulance and get out to a call. Sure. We weren't taking anyone away from her, they're allowed to go and get cups of coffee during their shift, at coffee shops. Anyhow, so he comes up and he tries and he goes, you're going to have to drive her in. Do you want to go in the bus, meaning the ambulance? Yeah. And I'm like, no, we'll drive in. And then my friend's going, no, I'll drive her in. So she's like, I'll drive you in. We'll just go in. They'll take it off in the hospital. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to go and sit and catch it. She goes, you won't. She said, you'll get there. They'll triage it. It's really bad. It looks like his toe's going to fall off. Like, we'll get there. They'll triage it. They'll put you. They'll do it really quick. We'll be in and out in seconds. Yeah. You'll get triaged straight into a room. I didn't know that they had these other rooms on the side. The sort of urgent attention rooms, but you're going to be in and out in 5 minutes. I don't know. There must be other things like that. A quick job one, maybe. So we went in the room. Well, no. We were in hospital for 2 days. Oh, what? They could not get this off his toe. And in the end, they had to do an anaesthetic and they had to keep him in hospital. It was like the baby who boomeranged back to hospital all the time. Wow. Like every time that baby got out of hospital, he was back in. And then afterwards, I found out, and I often say on Facebook and Instagram, the easy answer was, which we didn't know at the time, was to go and buy some, is it called Nair? The hair
right.
stuff,
That makes
which shaves,
sense.
which takes the hair off your legs and stuff.
It disintegrates hair.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So the hair goes around the toe in one
Yes.
direction, and the way the hair is, the hair's got the little spikes on it, and it gets tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and it keeps traveling in one direction, and it gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and it could serious damage.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's ever amputated a toe, but seriously, it looked bad.
If it's
So
been there long enough,
we've now
surely.
found out that the Royal Children's say
Yep.
put
What a
and then
great tip.
people say, oh, that's really dangerous. Oh, it's got chemicals.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's really dangerous. Oh, it's got chemicals. Oh, you should never say that. The damage you'll do to the skin. And I think I would rather, as a mum, put the hair cream on my baby's toe. Maybe not their penis. Maybe check with your doctor
Oh,
first.
sure.
But,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
maybe,
sure.
maybe, I don't know,
Yeah.
on their toe, and solve the problem with the risk of a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, because I can wash it straight after chemical damage,
That's
than a general
ridiculous.
anaesthetic.
Yes.
Surely the anaesthetic has got more risk.
Exactly. Of course
Surely.
it does. Of
Weigh
course
it up.
it does.
So
That's
there you go.
ridiculous.
So that is hair
Okay,
tourniquet.
and a good tip. Yeah. Well
So,
done. Thank you.
Let's move on to,
Yes.
let's move on to episode 11,
Mhm.
Settling Your New Baby.
Yep. So we're continuing on with this, and in particular, putting baby down.
So
to
we're
bed.
working through the book,
Yes.
and we feel like we're going back over subjects.
We do. We're going to tipple in and out because it's all related.
And we're going to do subjects small in some areas and then
Yeah.
really big in other areas. So
Yeah.
this is your really big, let's talk about settling your new baby. So we've talked about where baby's going to sleep. We've talked about why it's so different in hospital, how babies in special care are settled differently. So look, in the ideal world, you would follow a Save Our Sleep routine from day one.
Yep.
By the way, Taryn, do you think that's how we say the name? Taryn was on Kylie and
Oh, Taryn was it?
was on, what's
This
the
is
show
cool.
called?
Yeah, Kyle and Jackie O.
Thank you so much. Taryn said that she got on their show and said, follow the book and you will not need to sleep train. Follow the routines. Thank you, whoever you are. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking about the book. She did say she dropped the 2:00 feeds. I think she means the babies naturally drop them, that
Sure.
she didn't actually just drop them.
Yeah.
So in the ideal world, you would follow the routines and from day one, and you wouldn't need to settle your new baby, right? But we know that people buy the book, get given the book. It's the number one baby shower gift in Australia. They then have the book and then they think, oh, I'm not going to use the book straight away. I'm not going to follow the routine from day one. They don't even realize that you can follow the routine from day one. And then they've held, patted, rocked, hugged the new baby to sleep. So in the ideal world, don't settle your new baby. Have your new baby naturally settled from being full, warm and well fed from day one. But if you haven't followed that from day one and you need to settle your new baby, this is what you do. So you make sure their sleep environment is good. It's a holistic approach. So we make sure mum isn't on the mini pill. If she's taking antidepressants, we need to be aware that it can affect her milk. Very, very important. There's pros and cons. Of course, antidepressants might make your mood different and then your milk supply might increase if you're not as stressed. But in some cases, they might have the opposite effect. But you have to weigh it up. You have to talk to your health professional.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to give your baby a donor breast milk or express breast milk or formula, depending on what you're taking. For antidepressants. Also, thyroid medication can affect your milk. So all of these things we look at before we settle a new baby. You know, we look at the bedding. We look at what the baby's going to sleep in. We make it all safe. We've gone over all that before. There is a bonus podcast episode called The Bedding Guide. You have to look at that before. Well, you have to look at the paper version of the bedding guide or the printed PDF version that you can get. Look at that along with the bonus episode of The Bedding Guide, which is available on YouTube and on all the podcast channels. Only after you've done all of
Yes.
that,
Yes.
do you put your baby in their safe place with the correct bedding and teach them how to settle. Now, the easiest way to do this is to tick all those boxes, put them in their safe sleep environment.
I just got to make this really clear. Not just the boxes that Tizzie's just said now, as in you must read the whole book, because there are so many things to tick off before you should expect a baby to learn to sleep on their own.
If it's
the whole book.
If it's from day one, then they should be able to be fed, be well fed, and then have the correct bedding, and then just sleep. But we're talking about if you haven't followed it from day one, then you do have to teach your baby, and it becomes a learned skill.
Yes.
When they first come out of the womb, their pathways to get from awake to asleep in the womb are very different because they are maybe rocked to sleep with your movement or the warmth or your heartbeat.
Yeah.
When they come out of the womb, if you're going to sleep them on you or hold them for all of their sleeps, they'll still have the heartbeat and they can still use that. But let's face it, you can't do that forever. So the earlier you retrain their brain from the awake to going to sleep, the earlier you retrain that pathway, the easier it is for the baby, and the easier it is for you because they're not going to cry, because they're not going to expect a different way to get from awake to asleep.
Yes.
And then we know that the sleep, when they're asleep, if they only get the shallow sleep, it isn't as good for them. If they get the deep sleep, it's like their filing cabinet works while they're asleep, and it sorts everything out. Adults as well. Sleep is so important and so important for their entire life. So we need to teach them how to get from awake to asleep. So we follow all of the tips. The comforter, the safe bedding, the cot with the slats, but we won't go into it all now. It is
I just
up to
make
you.
Sure that
They're
reading the whole book first.
And they have to read the whole bedding guide.
And the whole
But let's just put it out there. It's their responsibility. Like they come to the Facebook support group, the Save Our Sleep support group, and they're like, I want to teach my baby how to settle. I'm doing this and this. And it's like, you need to take some responsibility as parents. You need to look at it all first. You need to look at the bedding guide first. You need to look at the routines first. You need to read the tips on page 119 or 120, depending on your book first. You need to do that before you just put your baby in the cot and expect them to settle.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't sit here every episode going back over it all.
No.
It's their responsibility.
Yes,
they need to go back and look. And it's their responsibility, parents' responsibility, to look at the Bedding Guide podcast. So you've done all that. You've checked everything. You've ticked everything off. The environment's safe. Right. You put your baby down in their cot and they're going to cry. They're going to cry. I don't want to go to sleep cry. We're talking about a new baby. We're talking about a baby from about, in this case, we're talking about a very new baby. So let's say from about 0 to 4 weeks is what we're talking about at this point. Yep. So you've said they're going to sleep, they're going to cry. They're going to do the I don't want to go to sleep cry. It's a protest. It's not emotional. They're not hungry. You can go back and listen to my cries. If you join the Facebook support group, there is a list, like a... what's the word? Not ingredients, index. There's an index to what's in every podcast.
Yes.
So go back and look at where Tizzie does the crying. I'm not going to do the crying in every episode. Listen to the crying.
Yes.
And then you will know
the difference between a protest cry and an emotional cry.
So your baby's in bed and they're doing a protest cry. So I say the best thing to do is, with a little baby, go to the kitchen, empty the kettle. What happens if you don't have a kettle? I don't have a kettle, so my advice is outdated. Go to the kitchen, empty the kettle, refill the kettle and boil it from cold. Make yourself a cup or a pot of tea. If you were in my household in Ireland, you'd be making yourself a pot of tea, even if it's for one person, and then you would be putting the milk into a milk jug, even if it's for one person, and then pouring the milk from the milk jug into the tea, because that's how it's done properly.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
my mum drinks tea
very
like
strange.
That.
Coffee,
but it's not the milk bit, but
instant coffee. You have to make the coffee.
Yeah.
Get the milk from the fridge, pour the milk into a milk jug, and then pour the milk from the milk jug. Oh, time-wasting mums. Anyhow, Nana, we all think it's great, but there you go. So you then drink your hot drink. And by the time your hot drink cools down and you drink it, then go to your baby. in that time, you will find that your baby has fallen asleep most of the time.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
Or put your baby to bed and go and have a shower.
Mhm.
Or put your baby to bed and go outside, do some steps.
Mhm.
You will normally find that your baby has gone to sleep. If your baby hasn't gone to sleep, pat your baby and help your baby to go to sleep. Okay? If your baby doesn't go to sleep at all in that crying time,
Yes.
then we need to look at why.
Yes.
We need to try and work out why. Are we sure the baby's well fed? Are we sure the baby,
Mm.
And then if your baby only sleeps for 40 minutes, that's talked about in the catnapping section. We then work out why we get your baby up. We'll discuss that when we talk about catnapping.
Yeah.
So, what happens if you put your baby in bed and they just lie there and they don't go to sleep and they lie there for the full sleep time?
Right.
What happens if you have a contented baby who is well fed and happy? This I get asked all the time. And you put them in the bassinet. Well, we shouldn't use a bassinet. We should use a mini crib where it slats the whole way around, or their cot, and they don't go to sleep. They just lie there.
What does that mean?
Well, it can mean a couple of things.
Okay.
Some very young babies sleep with their eyes open. So you think they're not asleep.
Okay.
But they are asleep.
Oh.
They just haven't worked out to shut their eyes
Oh
yet.
my goodness.
Well, they can't really see anything
Yeah,
anyhow.
sure.
And then people think that they're...
And they'd probably be asleep with their eyes open, maybe in utero as well. Like,
who knows?
Yeah.
So
okay.
some, not all, very rare, but we
Okay.
do see babies who lie there.
All right.
So they're just staring.
They're resting.
They're just staring into midair. But they're actually asleep. They're resting.
Okay.
Okay. If they're not actually asleep, they're still resting. I would not worry about it.
Yeah.
If they are wrapped and their arms are down
And
their body,
happy. Yeah.
they're wrapped and they're feeling safe and secure and they're not actually asleep, I wouldn't worry about it. Okay?
Yep.
So, and depending on the age of the baby, so we say to settle, to let the baby yell for a certain amount of time and then go in and pat for 22 minutes. Yep. Now, did we answer the question of where we got those times when we did? So that's in another episode.
Yeah.
So go back and have a look at which episode that's in.
Yes.
Now, why do I say after 22 minutes to get the baby up? This is for mum. This is as much for mum as for baby.
Okay.
A mum or dad can only listen to their baby protest for a certain amount of time. If you feel that you can pat for longer, or if you feel that your baby's just about to go to sleep, do pat for longer. If you cannot stand the protest, and in the book, it gives you times. It says a baby of this many weeks, let them yell for this many minutes before you go in. A baby of this many weeks, let them yell for this many minutes. If you cannot stand to listen to it any longer, get them up. Bring them out of the room. Don't try and settle them. Just get them up, bring them out of the room, talk to them. A little baby I'd probably keep wrapped and I'd sit down on a chair and I'd just sit gooing and gowing and talking to them.
Okay.
Then after a certain amount of time, which will be in the book, it will state in the book, take them back in, put them back to bed and start it again.
Okay.
Now, you would say, what is the difference with that and control crime? So, I will explain that in a minute. Before I explain that, let's just say, babies cry. All babies cry. In the olden days, they used to say crying was exercising. It was exercising the baby's lungs.
Right.
And the longer and the stronger cry the baby had, the more exercise they did and the better they slept.
Right.
And sometimes I think maybe there's some truth in that. Maybe babies just need to have a yell
An outlet.
to wind down before they go to sleep.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
Crying isn't always bad. As adults, we really only cry when there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So we see crying. But as babies, it's their only form of communication. Is it really a cry? Like, is it, it's not always...
It might have other meanings behind it for sure.
Upset.
Yeah.
So there's going to be crying. But a baby who's not on a routine and a baby who isn't sleeping and a baby who isn't settling, there's going to be more crying.
Yeah.
So yes, if you are teaching your baby to sleep, there's going to be crying. I would get a chart and write down every time your baby cries in the 20, before you start the routine. This is for parents who have not started the routine from day one and have jumped into it at 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whenever. before you start the routine, write down the first 3 days. Oh, I'm yawning again.
It's this. We need to explain. It's because you're not having coffees in the morning.
I'm trying not to have coffees in the morning.
So just
and this dark, calm room.
It is. And talking about sleep.
Yes. So, and I have slept. Maybe
Yeah.
because I know what it is. It's because we're coming to do the podcast. I go to bed early. I normally stay up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
I know, crazy.
But last night I went to bed at midnight because of the podcast. So I've had too much sleep. So I'm yawning. So, crying. So you write down 3 days before you start the routine, you keep a chart of every time your baby cries. With the set, then you start the routine. So you write down when they start crying, when they finish crying, and the total of crying in 24 hours. Then you start the routine. There may be more crying or less crying than before these 3 days before.
Okay.
So when you start the settling routine, the crying might go up. It might not.
Yeah.
Because if you've got a baby who cries for hours every evening, the total crying in 24 hours might go down.
Sure.
But if you've got a baby who only cries a bit and then you start the routine of settling, the amount of crying might go up.
Okay.
But it's like it's got to get worse in order to get better.
Sure. A lot of things too.
The first couple of days there might be more crying. Then you will see the crying get less and less and less. It's really important to keep a chart because you will see, and when we say crying, we're talking about protesting. The protesting will get less and less and less, and then you will see the protesting disappear, okay? Or sometimes some children will have a little protest just before they go to bed, and then it turns into singing when they get older, and that's how they go to sleep.
Yeah.
And some parents contact me and say, every time they lay their baby down to wrap their baby, the baby starts crying. And when I've observed some of these babies, it's actually an I want to cry. It's really interesting. So you lay your baby down to put the wrap on them, to put them into bed. You expect them to have a protest cry. A protest cry we can ignore. An I want cry you should never ignore. It's an emotional cry, right? So a few parents have shown me videos of their baby crying when they're wrapping their baby to put the baby to bed. And I look at these videos and I go, oh my goodness, that's an I want cry. Have you seen what the answer is?
Yeah. Can
Yes.
hurry up? Is it a hurry up and get me wrapped? I want to go to bed.
No, it's an I want. So what do they want? What are they asking for?
Their comforter?
Yes. So I have realised that these babies want their little friend. There's been a lot of people on Facebook, Instagram, social media. I say to my children, what is it? Look and despair. Like you read this stuff and then you get upset. Like I read this stuff and people share and then I despair over it because they say, oh, the comforters are really bad because the child takes a comforter and substitutes the human for the comforter, so they don't need their mum anymore because they've got the comforter but then I think, but maybe that's not a bad thing because then if something happened to you and you weren't there, your child would have the comforter.
Yeah, 100%.
So these babies are in love with their comforters. So you start wrapping them and they think, my little friend's coming in a minute. I want my little friend. I want my comforter. 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 And they get really upset. So I now teach these parents to put the comforter next to the baby's face when they're wrapping them. And the crying stops.
I love that.
So then as soon as they put their baby into bed, before they were doing this, so you've got the baby who's crying when you're wrapping them, and then you put them in, they're crying an emotional cry while you're wrapping them, an I want cry. Then you put them into bed, you put the comforter next to them and they stop and it turns to, well, in these cases, they don't cry at all because they know how to settle, so they go asleep. It's really interesting because these parents have now said that when they put the comforter next to the baby when they're wrapping them, they don't cry.
Yeah.
So that was the I want cry.
A comforter
shows how
is
secure they are.
So important, Tizzie. And one of my boys who sees an occupational therapist, and he, at the moment, we suspect because baby's due, he's having some heightened emotions at the moment. As an older child, you call it a transitional object. So it's something that, just like what you said, they can take a comforter with them when they can't take mum. So eventually they're going to sleep on their own or go to daycare or kinder or a friend's house, and it's right, or nanny's house when they're a few weeks old, or someone's house when they're years old. They can take this item, this comforter, with them.
And
it's
German
a transitional
research,
object.
German research,
Yes.
where they are very, very big into
Mm,
comforters in Germany, shows that children with comforters settle into kinder, school, and
they do.
daycare
Of course they
faster
do.
than other children.
Because they take that with them, and it's a piece of comfort.
Yeah.
It is.
I named it in Australia. They were not called comforters. In Australia, when I named Dream Feed, I named Tog, and then someone put up a thing last night, and Gracie Lacey tagged me in it.
I love Gracie
where
Lacey.
they said, Togs. What is Togs? It's not
okay.
Togs, it's Tog. So
Yeah.
they, with the, what was I saying about the comforters?
Germany?
Germany research.
their
I've lost my trail of
research.
thought.
Regardless, they are so important and such a beautiful item to introduce ASAP to babies.
Yeah,
safe
and
ones.
something
Safe
else
our
about
sleep
my
ones, of
comforter,
course.
which I hadn't realised till
Yes.
recently,
Yep.
is I hadn't realised this. So my comforters are made out of polyester, and a lot of people are like, "Oh my goodness, you can't use polyester." We have done testing. We've tested the way we've made them. They're not going to be a problem if they go on the baby's face and so on. A lot of people say, why? Like, why aren't they 100% cotton? Well, when they're 100% cotton, they fall apart after a few weeks. They don't last.
Yep.
Your children can't have them when their children are, they don't last till your kids are 7 or 8 because they've fallen apart.
Yeah.
But also, picture this. In Australia, so many people go camping, right? And so many parents get their kids ready for bed and then have a campfire. And so many children hang around the campfire with their comforter. And when you look at the organic 100% cotton ones and what happens to them when a spark from the fire goes on them, and when you look at the Save Our Sleep ones, what happens? Now, the other thing is, children are known to do funny things with their comforters. Children will put their comforters into a fridge and make them really
Sid
cold.
and Otto do this all the time.
Have you ever heard about when we were in
All the
Bintan and
time.
we lost we were at Club Med and we lost the comforters, and I kept sending
This
Dara
has
back
literally
to the
happened to
hotel
us.
room to look for the comforter,
Yeah.
and we couldn't find the comforter, and Kieran wanted to go asleep, and we were at this fun thing, and we were on holidays, and we wanted to be out of routine, and we wanted him to sleep in the pram, and we kept sending Dara back to look for the comforters, and I'm going, but I brought spare comforters with me, and we couldn't find any of them. And we searched and searched, and then in the end, I've gone back and I've gone to get the express breast milk out of the fridge to give him. And there's the comforters all in the fridge. He'd put them all in the fridge.
So funny. It's so true.
But they also like to heat them up. So children will find a lamp and they'll put the
them on
comforter
the heating ducts.
on the lamp.
Yep.
Yeah, to heat them up. And if they are made of the wrong fabric, they go on fire.
Okay.
So you
So
don't
it really is a
realise
safety
how
thing.
much research.
Yeah.
And then the size of the head. Like, I see so many people, and it's really hard because they come to the support group and they put this beautiful picture up of their baby in the support group. And they show this comforter with this big head. And it's really dangerous. And it's really hard to say to these parents, your comforter is really unsafe. It's a toy. It shouldn't be in the cot with your baby. It's not safe.
Yeah.
And I'm not comfortable giving people advice when they're using unsafe comforters. But then also you see these people with these beautiful knitted comforters and you think that's only going to last about 6 months before it starts falling apart. And then are you going to be able to get new ones? Like, have you bought 10 of those? Because with my ones, I say if you can afford it, have 6 on rotation. But with these ones, you'd need 20 or 30 of them on rotation, and they're really expensive because they fall apart.
Yeah, I've got to show. I'm going to put a photo up of Muko, Sid's comforter, which is not a Save Our Sleep because I only got onto it a few months in, but it is cotton with a knitted front, and it ain't got a knitted front on it anymore. He is covered in patches. It's hilarious, and I could never replace it either because
find any more.
there were no more. I contacted stores across Australia when I realised how addicted Sid was to this cow. But I'm going to put a photo up on my Instagram because it is so true, everything that you're saying, and I get it now. I completely get it. And I just want you to talk too about the heads, because I loved learning what made the heads of your comforters so much safer than a bigger head.
Yeah. So I was going to say, ask me that in 1
Yep.
second. I was going to say with the comforters, what happens is you give a baby a comforter when they're newborn and they don't look attached to it.
No.
They get to 10 months old and you realise that they are
Yes.
head over heels in love with that comforter.
Yes.
But the difference between when the comforter is bought at day one as a gift, so let's say somebody buys you the comforter and gives it to you at your baby shower, or somebody buys it when your baby's a week old.
Yes.
Forward 10 months to when you realise that there's a love affair
This
going
is
on
what
between your
happened.
child and your
Yep.
comforter. That comforter is no longer
Too late.
available
Yes.
on the market. So
Yes.
it doesn't matter how hard you try, you cannot get that comforter. Too much time has passed. The fashion has moved.
Yep.
The colour has changed.
Yep.
With my comforters, we still have, in most cases,
your old
the originals.
editions.
Like we've got the old,
Yes.
and we, like it says on the website, they're $500, but that's just to try and stop people buying them.
Yeah, sure.
But some people would pay $500 for an old
Yeah.
comforter.
Oh,
now
I
you're
would.
asking about the
Yes.
heads.
Yeah.
So with the heads, you've got these toys which are called flat toys. So there's some toys which are flat bunnies, flat bears,
Yes.
flat dogs.
Yep.
The problem
They're
is
gorgeous.
they're gorgeous. But if your child was to roll, they can
Yes.
balance with their face on it and not breathe.
Uh-huh.
With some of these comforters, like there's a company in Australia that has a comforter and everybody has some. And I hear people talking about them and the heads are really unsafe. They're way too big. And on their website, they have me. So the lady has taken a section from my book about comforters and put it
Right.
on her website. So when people Google Tizzie Hall comforters, they come across this website and they buy these really unsafe comforters. Now the problem is the head has to be a size of, like, it has to be a certain size. We
Yes.
measure them.
Yes.
We have received 3,000 Dizzy dog comforters before. The sample has arrived and the head is the correct size.
Yep.
The 3,000 comforters have arrived and the head is 1 centimetre bigger in circumference than the sample. We have destroyed them. We have sent them to a place and had them destroyed.
Right.
We have claimed them on our insurance
Yes.
and sent them and had them destroyed. 1 centimetre bigger than the Save Our Sleep comforter results in the child being able to balance on it. If they can balance their head on it, they can suffocate. So please, please, please Google Tizzie Hall toy comforter and up will come a YouTube video of me. You'll see me standing, I think, in my shop with a mattress with some blankets on it. We'll put a link to it, and a
Sure.
stripy teddy bear. If you watch that,
Yes.
that explains to you
Great.
yes,
The
it's
difference.
really
Yeah,
important.
it is important.
So
Yeah, great.
back to crying for a few minutes. We were saying with the crying, they're going to cry for all these different reasons. Keep a chart of why they cry, okay? How long they cry, and you will see that the crying becomes less. And there will always be crying when changing sleep habits. Now, do we have enough time to talk about the difference? Yes. Even if we go over, I think, look, we're trying to keep the episode to 40 minutes.
Yeah,
It doesn't
it'll
happen.
be a
We're
bit
going to go over
Yep.
with the little episode part.
Yep.
But I think it's much more important to go over and stay on the same subject so that we can move subject in the
Best we
next
can.
episode
Yeah, for
than
sure.
not go over it. So let's talk about the crying,
Yes.
what the difference is with control crying and my approach. Control crying is when you put a baby in their cot. First of all, it's done all over the place in different circumstances.
Yeah. Just
People
when you decide.
don't look at the
It's-
holistic approach. They don't look at the bedding. They don't look at the cot. They don't look at the warmth. They don't look at the food. They don't look at the texture. They don't look at how much solids the baby's having, what time they're having it, if they
All
have
the
milk
things.
first, if they have solids
That's
first,
right.
if mum's on medication, if baby's on medication. If baby's just had croup and on steroids, they're not going to sleep well
Yeah.
because it is a side effect of
Yeah.
no sleep, etc. They don't look at all of that, right? Then with control crying, you put the baby in the cot, you leave them to cry for a set amount of time. When you put the baby in the cot, they cry, I want you, I want you, I don't want to go with... No, sorry, they don't cry, I want you. Sorry. Correction. They do not cry, I want you. They cry, I don't want to go to sleep.
Yes.
I don't want to go to sleep. I'm not tired. I don't want to go to sleep. Mum, I don't want to go to sleep. Then, when you walk back in after a set amount of minutes, the cry changes to I want you, I want you, I want you. Because mum walks in or dad walks in and says, it's time to go to sleep. Mummy loves you very much. It's time for sleep. Pat, 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 whatever, and walk back out again. When you turn around and walk back out, the cry turns to I want you.
Yeah.
It becomes an emotional cry with tears and sobbing. And when a baby is crying an emotional cry, they get hot. And when a child gets really, really, really hot, they vomit. The quickest way to cool their body down is to vomit. Okay? So they are crying the emotional cry. What's the difference? Well, with mine, the difference is you put them down in their bed, you leave them to protest cry for a set amount of time, and when you come into the room, you stay
with
in the
them
room until they are asleep.
Yes.
So that's the difference. Now, we'll talk about settling a 1-year-old and settling different children later. So we'll sort of talk about control crying again, but that is the basic difference.
Yep.
Now, also, the society we live in has changed how we learn the cries. So lots of people say that they love the Save Our Sleep routines because the Save Our Sleep routines have taught them the cries. Because when they're following the routine and their baby cries and they look at the routine and the next thing on the routine is hunger, is a feed, they know that that's a hungry cry.
That's right.
If the next thing on the routine is sleep, they know that that is a tired cry. So people say that the routines really help them interpret the baby's cries.
Yeah, they do.
The thing is, society's changed. We used to live with our families much closer. I mean, you're a Geelong girl and your parents are in Geelong, and Luke's a Geelong boy and his parents are in
Very
Geelong.
lucky.
So you're lucky, and it's different.
I'd have them all in my house, though, if I could. I really would.
Would you?
Yeah,
And
I
it's
really
different.
would. Yeah.
I live with my parents on the other side of the world,
Yeah.
and I have lots of friends whose parents are in Sydney or Canberra or different places. And also, our parents now work. Like, not my parents. Well, my mum did work, but like the parents your age, like parents who are in their 30s now, as I'm getting close to my 50s, they all work still. Like your parents might still be working. So you don't have your mum visiting you every single day. I touched on this on another episode. If your mum visits you every day and gives you a bit of advice every 8th day, it feels like a little bit of advice. If your mum visits you once every 6 months or once a year and stays for 3 weeks and gives you all the advice at once, it feels like she's interfering.
Yeah, it's true.
It feels like she's criticising your parenting.
Oh, bless her. She's
So it's the same advice. It's just given too much at once.
Yes.
When you grew up in Ireland, if you grew up in Ireland, especially if you grew up like in the Troubles in Ireland, in Belfast, I always go back to Belfast, but it's just because I just picture, and it's not Belfast, like Dublin as well. There would have been parts in Dublin where there were houses and houses and houses in rows. Last night, Kieran was asking me about the Google Maps, and we were looking at the Earth, and he'd learned in school about the boy who'd found his way home to his home in India from Google Maps, and we were looking at Google Maps, and I started looking for my house, or not Google Maps, Google Earth, and started looking at my house, Google Earth, and Kieran said, why do all the houses look the same? And why are all the houses in one big long line? And I said to him, not only that, Kieran, but when we were children, all the 5-year-olds hung out in one house and all the 10-year-olds hung out in the other house, and all, and often 5 or 6 of the same family lived on the same street. Like, you were round babies from the age of a baby to the age of leaving home to get a job at 16. Back when, my parents were children. You, even if you didn't, so I think you could get a job as early as 12, like in those parts of Ireland. You learned the cries from day one. Society has changed. You're given a baby and just told, work it out. It has changed.
Yeah,
So
it
let's end
has.
on that note.
Yeah.
We're not going to end, we're going to take a question.
Question.
Society has changed. We better make it a short question.
Okay.
And we will be back for episode 12 soon
Yes.
and move on in the book. We are following the book.
We're
Right.
doing our best. The question this week is from Olivia. She asks, if your baby does not nap at the 4:30ish nap time, because in the book you say they may not, it's so hard for them to stay up until 7 p.m. as their last wake up time was 3 p.m. What do you advise in this situation, Tizzie?
So first of all, Olivia, it would be great to know the age of your baby, which I don't know from that question. So we need to first of all say that what's the difference between a sleep and a nap? A nap is 40 minutes. It's one sleep cycle. A nap is one sleep cycle where it's only the shallow sleep. A sleep is where you put multiple sleep cycles together. So if a baby is 4 months old, a nap would be 40 minutes and a sleep would be about 2 hours. So in my routines, we have 2 sleeps, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and then we have a nap in that sort of late afternoon, early evening time to get them through to 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
It is very important that one of the sleeps or that nap is done outside in the fresh air. It's also important that mums realise it's okay to have the nap on you. You always say that you love this part of the book.
I do.
You've mentioned before
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
nap. Do you want to say it again?
I just like that people think routine and they think that that means housebound, but actually quite the opposite. And this 4:30 nap is always encouraged elsewhere, not in the cot. Like it could be in the car, in the pram, or on you. It's just your time to teach baby that they can sleep anywhere. And yeah, who doesn't love a cuddle nap?
Yes.
In the late afternoon or a walk. Both of them are really beneficial to mum as well as baby.
Yeah. And you can do that outside pram nap or pram sleep outside getting fresh air at another time of the day. But it's very important that you don't put them into their cot at this time because when you put your baby down in their cot, it's asleep and you're telling them, it's time for you to go to sleep and you have to go to sleep and I'll get you up after your sleep. If you put them down for their nap in the cot, and then they don't sleep and you get them up, you're giving them mixed messages.
Yes.
So not a good idea. So if you couldn't get out and about and you needed somewhere else, you could set up a safe porta cot in your house for them to have this nap, but it has to be safe. So that's a reason why we do it as well on you. And we don't do it in their cot because it's important. But what happens if they don't sleep? So the first thing, if you came to me and said, my baby is not sleeping at this nap, what do I do? The first thing I'd say is, well, what age is your baby? And if it's a young baby under 6 months, I would like the nap to be happening in a flat carry cot type, bassinet type pram. I call them carry cots. Flat pram and facing you. You need to make sure you're following the bedding. So they need to have their comforter, they need to be wrapped, they need to have their sleeping bag if they're of an age of a sleeping bag, and they need to have the right bedding on. They are going to be hotter in the pram. However, so if it's warm weather, you need to reduce the layers. If it's cold weather, they might be colder in the pram and you might need to increase the layers. So you need to be careful of that. Now, if they're a young, that's what I'd look at. If they're a young baby,
looking at why.
I would be saying, well, maybe put them on you and try wrapping them and holding them on you and doing the heartbeat. If they're an older baby, I would say, well, maybe they just do not need that nap.
That's right.
Lots of people are convinced, overtired. If I put my baby to 7 p.m., they're going to be overtired. I'm not so sure about that. If they've had 2 good sleeps during the day, you would be surprised at how easily they will get from 3 p.m. through to 7 p.m. Why on the routines do we say they go to sleep, you get them up at 3 p.m. and then as they get older, we say get them up at 3:20. Well, that's because first of all, it's really important that 3 p.m. feed's done at 3 p.m. for the mum's milk supply and for the quantity of milk and the type of milk. And if it's done at quality of milk, and if it's done at 3 p.m., there's enough gap before the 6-ish feed. That's really important in the young days. Secondly, they aren't moving. So when they're not moving when they're young, so they don't get exhausted in that window block.
Sure.
When they start moving, if you're following the lazy parenting approach and they start crawling and stuff at 6-7 months, that's when you start letting them sleep till 3:20
Yep.
because they're moving and they're getting more tired.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, and you can also move that milk feed out a bit by then, and they're having solids, and they're going to have solids in the evening. So that's okay. If she really can't get baby to nap at that time, and her baby is sort of the 4, 5, nearly 6 month mark, yes, you could bring the 7 o'clock bedtime forward to 6:45, but I would only do that if you really, really, truly have tried getting to 7 p.m. and your baby hasn't settled, or your baby has settled and woken up 40 minutes later screaming. I would try and avoid it. I hope that answers your question, Olivia.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yes.
And thanks
So,
for listening, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening. And remember, please go on and give us a 5-star or a 1-star or a 2-star review. Please give us a review. Please talk about us. Please pop some stuff up on the Instagram. Please look at the Instagram. Please look at the competitions on the Instagram. Please give us feedback. Let us know what you want. Let us know if you want the competitions. Let us know, let us know what you want
Just
from these
get in
podcasts.
touch. Yeah,
and subscribe.
please.
And also, these podcasts are not aimed at new parents. These podcasts are aimed at giving people who have the book and have read the book more detail of the book. So we keep going, we've only got to here, we've only got to there. Well, we're not going to sit here and read the book from front cover to back cover. There'd be no point. They can just listen to the audiobook. So that's why we go off subject. It's important to look behind what's in the book and give you the extra detail that cannot be in the book because the publisher needs it a certain amount of words.
That's right.
So everyone have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
You have been listening to the Save Our Sleep podcast, brought to you by the International Baby Whisperer Proprietary Limited. You will find more information about the Save Our Sleep philosophy, product support, and how to watch the mini clips that accompany this podcast at saveoursleep.com. You may find the Save Our Sleep social media accounts by searching Tizzie Hall on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for all my how-to videos and to watch the podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate the podcast and share it with your friends. I would like to thank Zoe Starr for co-hosting, Ben at Fundamental Studios Geelong for the amazing podcast recording room, Nick Dale at Primer Films for this production, and most of all, you, the listeners. Without you, there would be no reason for this podcast. Please enjoy, stay safe, and Zoe and I will look forward to chatting with you again next week.